So if you have a band and a small weight, that would be great. We're going to start on our hands and knees. We're going to work on some glute strength, but of course we're going to mobilize our body a little bit first. So if you take the band behind you and put it behind the back of your glute, if you make this too big of a motion, it will kind of snap up and hit you in the back of the head. So not my favorite way to start a day. So just make the move small. So you're going to then put your hands down. And once you get your hands down, you can kind of adjust it a little bit. It just needs to be behind your thighs as high as possible. And if it keeps rolling like mine is, you know, you do the best you can, but you try to get it up closer to the top of your glutes. Okay, so then from here, just round your lower back, just your lower back, and extend your lower back, and start to take this into that waving motion so that you're going back a little bit and you're going up, and you have the additional push of the band kind of pushing you forward, something to push back into, and then curl the pelvis. Like I said, it's very small, it's in the lower back. Should feel like the band is pushing you forward, kind of driving the motion. So you're doing the wave motion. So if I took the band off, we've done this a lot where you're doing this huge waving motion. That's what we're doing. It's just in the lower back, so it's smaller. Amy, I don't know if you want me to see you or not, but your camera isn't on. That's fine with me. It's up to you. And so as you're moving your pelvis, you're trying to find the movement through the hip joint and through the lower back. Should feel nice to have the resistance of the band. And one more time. And then we're going to slide the band up to our upper back. Once it's behind your upper back, between your shoulder blades, put your hands on. And now I want you to do the same motion, but focus more on the movement of the upper spine. So you hinge and you flex. And you can do a little extension as you go back and flex. Little extension. And just do two more, opening up the sit bone in the back of the pelvis. And one more time. Nice. And then we're going to come to laying on our back. Keep the band where it is. You might be more comfortable if you kind of grab a wad of the band in your hand. And just find that press into the band again. We're going to imprints. You could keep your feet down if you wanted, but imprints, lift one leg up to tabletop and then the other. We're going to find this little reach further up towards the ceiling. So protracting and then retracting, letting a band draw down. So protracting and retracting. And as you do that, if you want to add a toe tap to this, that would be great. So toe tapping, draw the shoulder blades back towards each other. Toe tapping, draw the shoulder blades back together. Nice. Just getting our upper body connected to some movement of our lower body. Nice. Looks good, everyone. And then one more time, finish up even on both sides. Hold the legs up and just stir the arms in the socket. It's not meant to be super heavy, but you should feel some resistance. If it's not heavy enough, just fold back into the band a little further. Connecting to the back of the shoulder. And then pause the arms, connect your shoulders, extend one leg out, single leg stretch. With the head down, you should feel like you're working a lot to keep the ribs from popping up off the mat. So it shouldn't necessarily feel a lot easier than if you had your head flexed up. Obviously, the lower you press the leg, the more work you have to do to stabilize. and 4, 3, 2, and last one. And bring legs back in, set that down. Take the band out from behind you. Set the band down for a moment. Take your legs really wide apart, wider than the mat probably. Take your arms out to a T. Drop your knees one way, rotate and look in the opposite direction. So you're opening across the front of the pelvis, and then drop the knees the other way, open across the front of the pelvis, look in the opposite direction, and then continuously keep that moving. Trying to use the feeling of like you're pushing your hips forward to open through the torso. Yeah. Kind of like if we were still laying in bed and we were yawning, that kind of feeling of reach. And then you're going to tip your knees over to one side. Continue to roll over to that side so your shoulders kind of square off or even turn towards the floor, and see if you can extend the leg towards straight the back one. Then your arm can come back overhead. You tip the other way. You let your shoulders go with you. Reach through the leg, opening across the front of the hip. You're creating opposition with the arm. And just once more each side. Reaching through the arm and the leg and coming back around and tipping, reaching through the arm and the leg and coming back around. Awesome. So then without anything underneath your head, bring your feet a little bit closer together, but they're still very wide. And bring the knees towards each other. Roll your hips up off the floor. Let your knees separate away from each other to roll back down. So you're doing a hip roll, but you're letting the knees roll in, letting the legs roll out. Trying to get a little more movement through the spine. So knees come in, we roll up, knees point out, roll down. Knees point in, roll up, knees point out to roll down. Good. Reverse it if you can. So knees pointing out, then they pull in. You might feel a bigger stretch across the lateral side of the leg that way. Really keep the hips high as you bring the knees together. And roll up. Try to articulate through the spine. And just twice more. And last one. And coming back down. Take your band and put it behind the back of one knee. I'm going to do a modification of one leg circle. That will feel really awesome on your hips, I suspect. So cross the band in front of your leg and hook it behind. Hold on to the band, put your elbows down on the floor, and then just stir your leg in the hip socket. If it's more functional to have the leg down, have the other leg out of the way. You're trying to have some resistance so that the resistance is pulling in all directions on that leg. And it should feel like it's supporting you. And then reverse so that the hip flexors aren't working so hard and the leg can just glide in a circle. Circling around. Try not to have your arms go with you or you're not taking any resistance. You're trying to increase the resistance. So leave your arms where they are and the resistance will increase as necessary. Yes, that's better. And then switch to the other side. And once you get the band around the other side, this first hip already to me feels more released. This might be a good homework exercise for you to do in the middle of your day. Bending the elbows and circling around. As you're circling, trying to stir the thigh bone in the hip socket. And reverse. Again, it should feel like it's gliding Should feel like it's an easy movement, and easy isn't always bad. I think in the world of fitness, people think that whole no pain, no gain kind of mentality, but finding ease in our body is a really important thing to be able to do, because it's actually not true that it has to be painful for you to have benefit. And then you can take the leg out of the band. You can set the band aside. If you have trouble with the roll up, you could hook the band on your feet and do a bicep curl with the arms as you come up. Otherwise, we're just gonna do a nice easy roll up with the legs a little wider than they normally are. So bring the arms forward, roll up, peeling up through the spine, reaching the arms forward and rolling back down. So even though we generally think of this as a spinal articulation and mobility exercise, it's definitely that. It's definitely an abdominal exercise, but it's also a hip mobility exercise. So as we're moving, we've got to find some movement through the front of the hip. So it's like you're peeling each piece of the back of your t-shirt off the floor, and then you're folding over the legs, and then you're rolling back to the back of the waist of the pants and reaching back out. Wider with the feet and more bent is going to be a little easier to mobilize the hip joints. So normally you do this with your legs closer together. Often I have you guys during these online classes do it with the knees really wide, because I want to mobilize your hips a little bit more. I know we're all sitting more than we might like. And roll up on this next one, stay there, drop your legs into a Z sit, put one hand down and just reach the other arm around. Again, you're trying to open through the front of the hip, trying to find some big rotation, come back to the center, you roll down and we'll go the other way. And the arms reach forward, you peel up, you reach across the horizontal, spin around yourself. There's no right way or angle to take the arm. Find where you feel some nice movement going through your spine. It could be low, it could be medium, it could be high, wherever you're tight. Find those places and kind of move through them. We'll do 2 more on your own timing. And one last time. And then once you get back down to laying on your back, keep your arms overhead, sneak your feet a little closer into you, round the pelvis under, parallel legs this time, roll the hips up. Once you're there, keep the hips up. So you can keep reaching the fingertips overhead to elongate through the spine away from the knees. Drop one hip a little bit, press that hip back up. Drop the other hip a little, press it back up. It's not like you're trying to touch the floor. You're still trying to keep the other glutes connected. So it might be an inch or so that you move. And continue to do that a little bit faster. Rotate, keep pressing the pubic bone up. Rotate, 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 rotate. And it might turn into kind of a shimmy. Should feel some work at the back of the legs going on. And then reach further through the fingertips and take a really long time to stretch yourself back down to the mat. And then we're going to roll onto our side. We're going to start with the legs in front, 90 degrees. If you want to use the weight that you have, you can hold the weight on the side of the hip to add a little additional resistance. So long through the side of the waist, just start by lifting the top leg up like you're opening a book and closing a book. Think of leading a little bit with the knee so that you're not ending up slightly knee drop down. Yeah. Today, knees in front of the hips, so it's like you're sitting in a very straight chair. All this stuff won't work if your legs are at the wrong angle. Yeah. And I think bring your knees a little further forward in front of you. Yeah. So pressing your leg up and lowering it down. Press up and lower down. All of us have different ranges of motion. That's totally fine. Don't feel like it has to be so big that you tip backwards. Yeah, nice. Looks good, everyone. And then hold the leg up at about hip height. I think it's easier if you flex your foot, keep the angle at the knee and just kind of kick back like you're trying to push your foot back, and then flex at the front of the hip and come forward. Kick back a little and forward. Holding the height of the leg, trying to keep the knee and the foot in line with each other. That's right. Deep crease at the front of the hip and kick back. And kick back. And then we're going to combine those motions. So we go forward, up, back. This is the hard one to hit. Make sure you get all the way to your back position. And around. And around. And initiate with your knee a little sooner so that you're not slightly lifting with your foot higher than your knee. Like kind of think of clam a little bit, yeah. Reverse if you haven't. As your leg comes in front of you, make sure the knee isn't dropping down. So you're trying to maintain that parallel line. Yeah, awesome. And last one, set this leg down, set your foot down. There's nothing here between my knee and the floor. If I put my knee all the way down, it would tip me way over. So it also is more work to have to hold my hip up. So I have some space here. If it's too hard, grab something from your living room, a yoga block, a foam roller would work, or something, block, and put it under here. So you're gonna lift and lower, and I'm kind of just like tucking my toes under. I feel this top hip working to hold my leg here. So lift and lower the bottom leg and play around with the angle. So the knee can be pointed more up, the knee could be pointed more forward, the knee could be pointed more down. You also can play around with the angle. So my leg could be more forward towards the front corner of the mat, or it could be more directly underneath me. So with each tick of my leg, I'm going to try to do all of those things. I'm playing around with the angle. I'm playing around with the rotation. Yeah, nice. And usually most of us will find one rotation of the leg and position to be a little more difficult. So don't shy away from that spot. And then take this into an oval shape. 6, 5, 4. And then reverse. And then you can sneak your leg back underneath. Take both arms forward. Take the top arm forward, spinal rotation, reach up to the ceiling, rotate your torso open. Take a big stretch here, take a breath. Create opposition, top knee is reaching forward, upper body is reaching back. And then come all the way back to the start position. And we're gonna take the top leg out to straight. Flex your foot, 2 kicks forward, side kick, 1 reach back. And forward and reach back. If you want it to be more challenging, the leg can be out on the diagonal. Since we just did a bunch of other hip stuff, I'm going to stick with the modification. Forward, trying to stay long through the spine, press back, keeping the torso as still as possible. Two more. And last one. The top leg, flex your foot, slightly turn your knee and your toe down, lower your leg. Should feel like a stretch on the outside of the hip. The bottom leg, try to rotate your thigh bone in the hip socket to lift the foot up, lower the foot down, lift the foot up, lower it down. Yeah, so you can feel that the rotation is coming from inside the hip. So then the legs are gonna move in opposition. So one leg up, one leg down. Feeling like you're arcing through the side of the hip, kind of carving out this outside of the pelvis. I'm thinking of reaching through the legs so that, I mean, nothing really in nature or in our bodies moves in straight lines. So feeling like there's an arcing motion happening through the leg. Keep going. And last two. And last one. Hopefully I'm not the only one feeling something back here. And that we're gonna come up, but let's just switch to the other side. Nothing too fancy. So laying on the second side, knees in front of the hips, press the top leg up and lower it back down. As you lift and lower the leg, trying to stay neutral through the spine, long through the pelvis, long through the waist. Awesome. Trying to slightly lead with the knee so that it doesn't ever look like the foot is a lot higher than the knee and the hip. Just lifting and lowering, no circle yet. And this is a good one for you, for your homework. Yeah. And then lift your top leg up to hip height, kind of kick back, flex at the front of the hip to come forward. So kicking back and flexing forward. As your leg goes back, you're trying to not have the body go forward and back. You're trying to stay really still, like you're laying on a paddle board, not tipping over. And last one, take it into your circle. Full range. Deep crease in the front of the hip. Make sure you find that moment where your hip is open and your leg is back. Nice. And reverse, circling the leg around. As you're circling the leg, trying to stay as still as you can through your torso. And one more time. And set that leg down in front of you. Take both arms forward. Reach the top arm forward. Do that spinal rotation. Rotating the torso open, feeling the top knee reaching forward as you rotate the torso back. Take a few deep breaths. And then come back up towards the ceiling. Close hand to hand. Come back to that same position again. I'm going to seek the bottom leg out from underneath us. This top foot, again, there's space between the knee and the floor. Kind of hook your foot to the floor. If you need to put a foam roller or something in there, you can. And then just lifting and lowering the bottom leg. Play around with the angle, play around with the rotation. So each tick, you're kind of changing which direction your knee is facing. That's right, so lift and lower, lift and lower. The leg can be more underneath you, the leg can be more towards the front corner of the mat. Should feel like you're working a little bit in that top side of the pelvis just to have the leg in this position. And take it into your circles, circling the leg around. And reverse the circles. And then rest. Bring your legs back underneath you. Stretch the top leg out long. 2 kicks forward, 1 sweep back. If you want the bottom leg to be straight, you can, but side kick here. If the bottom leg is straight, it's forward on a slight diagonal. Just kind of opening up through the front of the hips. One more time. And then bring the leg directly underneath you. Drop it down towards the floor, slightly turning the knee and the toe down. You might feel a stretch on the outside of the hip right away. Play around with the rotation of the bottom leg. So you're gonna try to rotate the bottom leg so the foot goes up to the ceiling and then back down to the mat. So you're rotating the bottom leg. Once you've got that rotation of the bottom leg, foot going to the ceiling, foot back down on the mat, add the top leg going in opposition. That arcing motion, top leg is going up, bottom leg is going down, and vice versa. Finding rotation through the bottom leg and lift lower through the top leg. Trying to find this kind of scooping, arcing feeling through the outside of the hip. And 4 more. And last one. And bring your leg back in. Come on up to sitting. You can do this with or without the band. So if the band ends up being too fussy or it's too much resistance, then get rid of it. So if you take the band and you put the band behind the back of one foot or both feet, it doesn't really matter for right now because we're going to start moving. And then you're going to put your hands on the band and hold the band down pretty long through the band because we're going to be pushing back into the band. So you have to have enough length that you'll be able to straighten your leg back there. So for me, I'm kind of holding at the ends of the band. Yeah, okay, so once we have our one leg down, one leg in the band, we're gonna push the leg out and try not to shift your weight forward as you do this. So push your leg out, bend your leg back in. Do that a few times. So connecting the back of the leg, push out and pull in. Keep both elbows straight. Push and pull. Yeah, nice. So if you don't have a band, just think of creating more internal resistance. So it's like somebody's back there and you're trying to push something away from you. Push something away from you. Nice. On the next one, push your leg out, hold it there, and take your leg a little to the right and to the left, keeping it the same height off the ground. Should feel like a lot of abdominal work here to stabilize. Shift one way and the other. Trying to keep the pelvis still. And then bring the leg back in. From there, you're going to press your leg out one more time and circle 6, 5, kind of oval shape so you're not smashing into the other leg. Keep your knees straight. Reverse 6. And then bring your leg back in. Step the other foot into the band and press your leg out. Find that same thing on the other side. So bend and stretch. As your leg presses out, your body's not going to shift further forward. Trying to stay really long through the torso. Trying to stay centered between right and left. Feeling like you're opening the whole back line of your pant leg. It's like your leggings are opening at the back of the knee. Push the leg out, hold it there, go a little to the right and to the left. And then pressing it out for your circles or ovals. Reverse 6, 5, and last one. Come all the way back in. You can remove the band for a moment. You're going to feel a lot more free now that you don't have the resistance. So without shifting your weight forward or back, reach one leg out behind you, lift it up off the floor, hold it there. And now as you keep it the same height, I want you to allow the pelvis to move now as you swing your leg a little side to side. Should feel like more work through the standing hip. So you're going into a little side bend of the waist. Straighten your leg as much as you can. Yeah. And bring that leg in, extend the other leg out. Leg goes one way and the other. Pelvis is moving some, little side bend. Last one. And then bring your leg back in. Sit back towards your heels. Just press into your hands into a shell stretch. So you're trying to round back through your spine, push into your lower back, stretch your lower spine open. And then we're going to come to laying on the stomach. You're going to have your arms in a narrow V kind of overhead. Legs will be apart as well and turned out. And I just want you to start by bringing one knee and one elbow towards each other on one side. So it's like the beginning of a crawl motion. So you side bend towards it and then reach back out. And then you side bend to bring it in and reach back out. Depending on your outfit, you might be stuck to the floor. If your mat's too sticky, then feel free to get off the mat. And then you're going to bring the elbow and the knee towards each other. Bring the bottom leg across and try to make everything comes to that side. So you're making the bottom leg sweep across as well and the top hand. And then come back across. And then you go the other way. So you elbow to knee, arm and leg sweeps across. Sweep across. And then start to have less of the feeling of like you're dragging on the floor and more like you're lifting the leg to bring it across. Lifting the leg to bring it across. This eventually turns into more, but today we'll leave it at this. And last one. And then bringing your arms into a W position at your side. So hand by the shoulder, elbows are bent, wide across the collarbone, connect through the back of the leg. Start to pull yourself forward. So swan dive prep, lift your sternum, start to bring yourself up into extension. and then lengthen yourself back down. Do that a couple times. You only come up as far as it feels good to you. You are gonna feel work through the whole spine. There's not like, you shouldn't feel anything in your lower back. You have to feel something back there because we're extending the spine. So it shouldn't be pain, but it should be something. Just keep that in mind. Reaching long through the spine, lift through the upper back, try to get the upper back to extend, and then lengthen back out. Last time. Oh, it's beautiful. Extending through the upper back, lifting yourself up and lengthening back down. Bend one leg, you're like you're trying to kick yourself in the opposite butt cheek. Reach your hand back to try to touch it, turn and look in that direction. If you need to use a band or something to grab your foot, you can. Push your leg into your hand so that it brings you up and you're pushing against the floor, turning and looking in the direction to the side. Push, pull, push, pull. And then you can release that arm and leg, bend the other, grab. If you're still working on getting the band, that's total, or getting the leg, that's totally okay. Take your time. Push, pull. Nice quad stretch, which is why we're doing it. Michelle, if you bent your arm and put your hand by your shoulder, now think of kicking your leg like you're trying to push so hard with your leg, it comes out of your hand, yes. And then you keep that sense of arcing through the front of the hip. So, yeah. Let me see if I can explain this differently. So when I get all the way up to my top position, I'm not just gonna let the shape collapse. I'm trying to come up into that shape. It's like an arcing shape and keep the arc. So the front of the thigh is lifting away from the floor. Yep. And then when you've had enough of that, push back and yeah, exactly, Michelle. Push back into a shell stretch, round through your spine. That looks good, Bobby. It's coming. And from here, we're gonna come to laying on our sides. So laying out in one long line, lay towards the front of your mat. So there's extra mat behind you. Stretch your legs out long and just lift both legs and lower both legs. Lift and lower, trying to keep the ribs connected. Simple, you know this one, lifting and lowering. As you lift, try not to let it tip you backwards. So not about how high you go. Hold the legs up, take one leg forward, one leg back, like you're walking your feet underneath you. Walking, walking. Trying to make both legs go evenly. Of course, the bottom leg is going to be harder to get moving. And last one. And then we're going to lift both legs. Start to lift your torso as well. And then lower back down. Think of the waist pulling both ends of you up. Lift and lower. We've been doing this version of like a half teaser where you start to lift up and you pull your legs in and you tip backwards, then you slide back out. That is where we're going with this. So you lift yourself up, you drag the feet on the floor, pull yourself up, then slide the feet back out away from the hand to lower back down, pulling yourself up through that side bend. If you want to extend the back leg, you can. It's like your teaser moment. And sliding out. If you want to add to this, you're going to start to lift up, keep the feet off the floor, keep the legs straight and go into your full teaser. Oh, I like that the camera went out of focus for a second. Nobody had to see. It looked perfect out of focus, right? And lift, pull yourself up into your teaser. And lengthen all the way back down. Good, 3 more of whatever you're doing. So as you draw yourself up, it should feel like the waist is pulling you up and slowly lowering you back down. Awesome. Last one here. Of course, you could have the knees bent a little bit as well. And lower back down. Awesome. Let's switch over to the other side. Lay a little bit towards the front of the mat. One long line. Reach so far out of your legs that, like laser beams out of the feet, that it lifts the feet off the floor. Nice. Keeping the hips stacked and the shoulders stacked. Obviously, we're working towards not having to hold the floor because we have to be able to lift ourselves off the floor in a second. Nice. Hold the legs up, one leg forward, one leg back. As you're walking the legs underneath you, trying to move both legs equally in opposite directions. Top leg obviously is more free, so it's tempting to just make the top leg really big and the bottom leg barely move. Try to make them both move evenly. And then lowering your legs back down. From here, we're gonna lift from the waist to lift the feet and the head away from the floor and then lower back down. Good. And lift and lower. Awesome. So if that's going pretty well for you, you can add dragging the feet in, tipping back to the back of the sits bones, slide the feet and the hand back out away from each other. And you draw yourself up, pulling the feet towards you and slide the feet back out away. And dragging yourself up. You want to add the back leg extending, go for it. And sliding back out. And if you added your full teaser, you should do it on this side as well. Just like our faces aren't exactly the same on both sides, your body's not going to be exactly the same on both sides, but you're trying to even it out as much as you can. Really think of pulling yourself up, timing it so that the feet and the head lift at the same moment. You could bend the knees at the top if you need to for hamstring stuff. Length. And one more after this one. Whatever you're doing, that looks awesome, everyone. And then coming back down. Awesome. Come onto your hands and knees. Hands under your shoulders, knees under your hips. So swimming prep, reach the opposite arm and leg out, lift it up off the floor, touch the floor, bring it back in. Super simple, just trying to stay really level through the torso. So you're trying to feel like you're balancing something on your back. If you'd like to add to this, you can start to, or kind of enhance this to something a little more difficult. You can kind of add a little bit of a shift side to side and remove the same arm as leg. So same arm as leg, you have to slightly shift to the side, but you're trying to make that shift as minimal as possible. Same arm as leg, you try to reach it out so your fingertip and toe leave the floor at the same time and come back to the floor at the same time. If that's all going well, you can push through that bottom arm and leg to rotate the torso to the side, square yourself back off to the side, and bring it back in. So arm and leg extends, lifts up towards horizontal, turn your ribs to face the side and your pelvis, square yourself back off to the floor, and come back in. 4 more of whatever you're doing. Lifting, feeling stabilizing, having to happen around the shoulder and the pelvis. About 1 more. And you're coming all the way back in. Awesome. Sit back towards your heels, push into your hands for a moment. And then from here, we're gonna do something with a small weight. If you don't have a weight, you can, I don't know, grab a can of soup or something, but you're gonna put the small weight you have behind the back of your knee. Cool. And then come down onto your forearms. Stabilizing the torso here in neutral. And then you're just gonna kick that leg up to the ceiling, the one with the weight in it. Tap the knee down to the floor and then kick it back up. Flex your foot and really try to push your heel up to the ceiling. Exactly. Try to lengthen through the spine. Lift and lower. So this is similar to what we did when we were laying on our side, but it's totally different relationship with gravity. So it's going to be different work. Hold the leg up, do little pulses up there, trying to deepen that gluteal fold or that crease in the back of the hip. Just pulsing, pulsing, pulsing. Can you pulse an inch bigger? And then the leg is going to come down and it's going to open out to the side like kind of dog on a fire hydrant. Turn your knee down. You have to kind of find the sweet spot of how high your foot has to be off the ground. If your foot's too high, you might feel like you can't rotate. Just depends on your hip joints. So usually your foot a little lower will help. Keep pushing through the arms so you're not collapsing forward. And then taking this into a big circle. Around, 2. And reverse. And last one. And then bringing that in. And you can sit back if you want before you switch the weight over to the other side. Hook the weight behind the knee. Yeah, perfect. And then lift and lower that leg, kicking up. Tap the knee down. And as you're pressing that weight up and down, trying to kind of feel a swing in the hip. So that as the leg lowers, you're kind of finding some ease in the front of the hip. Hold the leg up, little pulse and pulse and pulse. Then lower the leg about halfway, open the knee out to the side, point the knee back down. Open the knee to the side, point it down. And then taking this into some circles, circling the leg around. And then reverse around. Last one. And then bringing that leg back in. You can set your weight down. You're going to come up to sitting with your legs crossed. I'm going to face away from you so it's more clear what's happening. I have my right leg crossed over my left. You're gonna reach the arms out to the side like side twists. So we're gonna start with a simple rotation. So you're gonna rotate to your right foot is in front, rotate to the right, 3 pulses, 2, 3. Then you're gonna start to rotate to the left, put your left hand down. Then in line with that, put the right hand down as you start to kind of come up to standing on your feet. Why are we doing this? Well, it's fun, but also because it's gonna help us to lengthen a little through our legs. And we pulse to the right, 2, 3, hand, hips go up. Kind of tuck your head, bring your head towards your knees. And then start to make it a little faster. 2, 3, hand, hips up, spiral back down. And this doesn't work for you to go up and down from the floor, then just do your spine twist where you go 3 one way, center, 3 the other way. Totally your call. Both will be great. One more time this direction. Hand, hips up, hips come back down. Then untuck your right leg so the left leg is now in front and arms are out to the side. We're gonna go left first. We'll go slow first. Left, 2, 3, right hand. Start to lift the hips. Start to put the left hand down, lift the hips up and spiral back in on yourself. And pulse, 2, 3, hand, hips up, hips down, and pulse. Lift the hips. And whatever you're doing is fine. If it's not perfect, it doesn't matter. Not about perfection. Curl, the more you bring your head towards your knees, the more you'll feel like you're lengthening, getting a little stretch. We'll do one more after this one. Curl back in on yourself. And then once you're sitting cross-legged, take your legs out from underneath you, bring your legs forward, bend your knees just a little bit. You can sit up really vertically with your legs straight. Go ahead and straighten them. If you need a little help, you might sit on a little bit of your mat to get yourself up just a little bit higher so that it's comfortable. Otherwise, knees bent and feet flat. Flex your feet, reach your arms out to the side. Very rarely do I teach you this exercise, but again, I want to lengthen through the legs. So you're going to rotate towards one leg, start to look down at that thigh, and then you're going to reach the front hand towards the toes. The back hand is reaching across the midline. And then you're going to stack back up so you're facing the side again and come through the center to the other side. This is called saw. Rotate, saw off your front toes, lengthening in both directions. So it's not just kind of splat over your leg. You are trying to go forward. You should feel some lengthening through the back of the legs, but it should also feel like you're working through the core to not just tip over. Stretching. And if you imagine you're sitting up against a wall, you're kind of peeling the upper back first and then through the lower back away from the wall, come back up to vertical and you rotate forward. Yeah, make sure the legs are at least shoulder width apart. So let's inhale to rotate, exhale, peel off that imaginary wall, sawing off the front foot and stacking back up to vertical, center back off. Rotate and saw, stacking back up and centering off. And one more each way, rotate, saw, stacking up and centering off. And last one, rotate, saw, coming back and stacking back to the center. Bend your legs back. Sorry, you can undo the mat if it's up. Bend your legs back towards you. Put your hands on the floor like you're gonna do a crab walk. Like we did at the beginning, tip your knees a little side to side, but then start to extend the arm and leg so you go further in that direction. Should feel like you get a nice sweeping motion of the arm to open the hip. Yeah. And then start to go a little faster so it has a little swing to it. Swing, sweep. And then when you're done with this one, come back to the center, roll down to laying on your back, hug your legs into your chest. Give your legs a little rock from side to side. You can lift your feet up, kind of like happy baby pose in yoga. Grab the feet and pull the legs down with the knees wide and the feet wide, and then kind of rock that shape a little side to side. Should feel kind of nice. And then when you're done with that, you can be finished. Good job. Thanks for coming.